How to present results for the annual program review. This is to help section B under guidelines for numbers 2 and 3, which are the assessment for the ILO and the PLO. The first thing to include in your results summary are the basics. Where and what is being assessed. You will be assessing more than one course assignment, so first you need to identify which is being addressed in your summary. As a side note, the list of assessments should already be in your plan, which is a separate document and covers all outcomes. If you recall, it looks like a table. So distinguish which course and which assignment is being assessed. As an example, students presented their research paper in Assessment 4321, which is the capstone course for the program. In addition, it's often helpful to present the assignment instructions as appropriate. Including instructions allows reviewers to determine if the activity aligns with the outcome, and it provides additional context. It's also useful for reviewers if they're examining the actual student work. Additionally, if a reader is not familiar with the subject or if an assignment name is unclear or vague, it also helps with understanding of the review. Assessment method. This is simply the guidelines that you use to assess the outcome. If you used a rubric, that would be the assessment method. If you used an exam, the exam itself would be the assessment method. As an example, you might include in your report, in order to measure ILO 2, effective communication, the oral communication rubric was used to assess students' presentations. Last, include the criteria for success. Describe how you are summarizing the rubric results, or test results as appropriate. Include the level of achievement that you expect students to meet. This can be simple or complicated. A more complicated example is, students are expected to score 3 or higher on components 2, 3, 5, and 6, and score 2 or higher on components 1 and 4. A simple example would be, students are expected to score 3 or higher on all components of the rubric. The same principle can be applied to exams, if you're looking at an overall exam score, or just looking at the scores of certain questions on the exam. After you've established what you're assessing, present your results. First, have your criteria for success been met? This is a simple yes or no. State either the criteria for success was met or the criteria for success was not met. Include along with that the data to support that decision. Present the summary of the data in the same manner you're using to measure against the criteria for success. As an example, 92% of students, 23 of 25, scored 3 or higher on all components of the rubric. Now that's a simple description of the results, but it's also useful to analyze the results a little bit deeper. The most common way to do this is by component. Look at the different components of the rubric, or perhaps different subject areas evaluated in an exam, to see if there are areas students are stronger or weaker in. This might be something you naturally do but don't think about it. Are there questions on an exam that most students missed? What did they cover? Include those in your summary. If you're looking at a rubric, you might have this. Although students met the criteria for success, there were few who scored 4 for both delivery method and organization. The scores for grasp of subject were evenly mixed. Students need to show more confidence and be better prepared for their presentations. Another, but less common way to examine results is by demographics. You can examine if a certain group of students performed better or worse than another group. If you're examining a course that has both an online and in-person component, you do need to compare the results of both groups in order to ensure that students are getting the same quality education in both formats. You might want to look at your data over time if you have results from previous years. You can examine if students are doing better, worse, or about the same. Now, if students this year perhaps did not meet your criteria for success, but they always have in the past and you haven't changed your assessment, your assignment, or what you're teaching or how you're teaching, then perhaps you have an outlier in your data and you don't need to make any changes until perhaps you notice a trend. If this has happened a couple years in a row, you might find that students are learning differently and you need to change up the way you teach. If your population is small, it might also be appropriate to combine years. This is a basic summary of how to present results. The next section is conclusion and recommendations.